everyone, how are you? I am your humble host, Leani Lopez. Welcome to another episode of I Got Nothing, a podcast for exhausted writers. It's been a minute since I've done one of these. Life has been epically insane, but I've been fairly productive, doing lots of writing, lots of reading, and overall just a lot of stuff's happening. A lot of good things are happening and coming down the pipeline. But I didn't forget about you guys. Thank you so much for all the downloads and listens. It just blows my mind that so many people like hearing me babble about writing. And I like babbling about writing, so it really, really works out. As always, if there is a question you have for me or a topic you would like me to cover, please feel free to send it along. You can find me on pretty much all social media. I will put the link in the description like I usually do. So for this week's topic, I wanted to talk a little bit about research. Through my conversations with other writers and overall just my writing journey over the last 20 years or so, something that I didn't realize was important when I started off writing was the idea of doing some research before you get going. If you're like me, you'll get this new crazy idea out of nowhere, or it'll cryptically come to you in dreams, and you just get so excited that you just want to sit down and just write. And that's great. Most of the time, that's pretty much what you got to do to get going, is to have an idea and be unable to contain that idea. But inevitably, when you're working, you are going to come up against a wall of your own knowledge. I'm sure you've all heard that phrase again and again and again, write what you know. And while I do subscribe to some of that, I think it's more fun when you write what you don't know, because that's how we learn and grow as people and as writers and creatives. However, that also poses a little bit of a challenge, because if you don't know it, how can you write it? And that is where research comes in. Research can take various forms, be it going to the library and checking out some books on the genre you're looking to write, or heading into the nonfiction section if you're going for something historical, or, like everybody else, using the internet. We're in a particularly expansive age when it comes to information, because almost everyone has a smartphone, almost everyone has access to a computer or the internet. So a lot of information is just right at your fingertips at all times. This can be both good and bad. As all of us who have grown up with the internet know, there is a ton of misinformation out there, and it's really difficult to wade through that and find hard facts sometimes. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But for right now, I want to discuss how important it is to do research when you're writing. And I'm not saying you always have to do just massive amounts of research and reading and cross-checking and fact-checking and all that jazz. Sometimes you do, and you muddle through it, and you get the information you need to continue your project, and it's all gravy. But you don't even have to go that far sometimes. You know, a little research goes a long, long way. You see all those posts and memes about authors spending hours looking to figure out one small fact for a scene that's only going to be read in like 30 seconds before they move on. And that is absolutely what happens a lot of the time. Most of what you research, you're probably not going to end up using. And it's probably not going to end up in the plot or in a side scene you thought was going to happen. But it's important that you have that information. For one, you won't be talking out of your ass. We have enough of that in the world. So getting a little research done and getting educated is a good thing. But it's also a way for you to gain another perspective. If you're like me and you like to switch genres from time to time, or like to explore different types of stories that you may have not done before, then it's important to research those genres because a lot of them have their own specific rules. For example, when I started ghostwriting romance novels with the company that hired me, I was given a Excel spreadsheet. No lie, this is true story. I was given an Excel spreadsheet of the breakdown of a romance novel by a certain word count, aka a romance novel of, let's say, 30,000 words. And it was literally broken down into how many words you should spend on each plot point. And for a pantser like me, that was way too constricting and very formulaic and just not fun. For some people, it works, whether it's because it helps them stay focused or it helps them know what is expected of them. But that was also the first time I realized, I mean, I knew, but I didn't know that there is a formula to romance novels. Which is why when you read so many of them, they're so similar because it's what works. It's what's been proven time and time again that a lot of readers want. I'm always the one who likes to turn the expectation on its head, which is probably why I didn't last too long with that company. But it was such an important learning tool for me because I was like, oh, yeah, I've been writing this one type of story my whole life, not really diving into the other stories of that type. And when I finally did, I was just like, okay, well, this is what is expected from this genre. And sometimes that's great. And then sometimes I'm like, oh God, I have to write this again. But I still have fun with it. And I get to subvert some tropes and I get to play around with the formula because I know what the formula is. Each genre has its own set of story beats that you need to hit. So, for example, if you're writing this romance novel and you're advertising it as this big, sweeping, romantic story and it's focused on these two people and their love for each other, but then you have like a random dead body that they find, or they find a unicorn and nowhere did you advertise that this was a fantasy romance or a crime romance, you're gonna get some people confused. So we all know there's genres and subgenres, and there's a lot of mix and matching that you can do, which makes it even more important to do your research because you're gonna know exactly how you need to structure those two genres together. And also, reading just makes you a better writer. It does. It really, really does. And I say this as someone who stopped reading for a very, very, very long time. I think last year I read 15, 16 books, which doesn't seem like a lot, but given that the previous years I read anywhere from 0 to 2 books, that's a huge jump. And it's definitely just kickstarted my creativity and just opened me up to so many new wonderful authors and seeing what those authors do with the genre that I'm interested in. You can learn a lot from other writers. You should be learning from other writers. No one writer knows everything. People are growing and learning all the time. And it's wonderful to evolve and to see yourself evolve and to have that knowledge that you took those steps to really learn your craft and learn more about it. And when I keep saying research, and I kind of touched on it before, but there are different types of research. If you're really great at just doing the whole hit the internet, pulling up everything you can, reading through websites, all that jazz, getting books and just learning and taking notes and doing all that. Perfect. Do it. That's awesome. And that's what works for you. Some people, that can get really boring or tedious or overwhelming. As I said before, there's so much misinformation, so you have to fact check yourself, essentially. You have to look at multiple sources, and if you're like, okay, well, this source says this historical thing happened, but this one says it was this, you kind of have to dig into that, especially if you're doing like a historical fiction or even historical nonfiction, especially nonfiction. Nonfiction writers, I'm sure, do years of research. I know they do years of research. So if you're writing fiction, doesn't mean you don't have to do research either. It probably would be a really great idea for you to. But as I was saying, if like the slogging through the internet or buying all these books or going to the library and doing heavy-duty research doesn't sit well with you, there are plenty of movies and streaming service, especially if you're into screenwriting or think you might want to do a screenplay someday. Watching movies and TV shows, and not just like the really, really popular ones. I'm talking like go on Netflix, pull up a random horror movie that probably has 3 stars and watch it and see what happens. I have done that a lot this year. I've gotten into watching horror movies and just any kind of horror movies. Classics like Nightmare on Elm Street and the first 2 Friday the 13th movies to like new ones like Hereditary and Midsommar. Oh gosh, so good. Both of those were so good. To anything and everything in between whose titles I literally can't remember because I just clicked on them and watched it. But that's another way you can do research, watching movies, seeing how you feel when you're watching that genre, seeing what resonates in that genre for you will be amazing and really beneficial. You don't even have to take notes, just being in the moment and consuming that type of story that you're looking to write is going to give you a more well-rounded perception. And speaking of another perception or perspective, interviewing people is a great one. Interviewing other authors who write the same genre you're looking to write. Checking out interviews. Authors do interviews all the time. Whether it's like written, you can find a bunch of them on YouTube. And you can just watch interviews with your favorite authors and see what their insights are and what they say. Or not even just authors, but looking up experts if it's something that's nonfiction that you're looking to really dig into, or something fiction that you're looking to base in reality. Just go onto YouTube, pull up a couple interviews, and just watch. And, Google will always be there. Google will bury us someday, unfortunately. But there's plenty of links. You can just literally start by going, Google, help me out with this genre, and see what comes up. However, after all of that, and being such an advocate for research, there has to be a point where you stop researching and start writing. The novel I'm working on now, Phoenix's Call, which is a historical romance fiction, is about female pirates in the golden age of piracy. My main character is a mixed-race female pirate whose ship was stolen about 2 years before the book started. She lost her crew and she's been landlocked in Port Royal, and she's looking to finally get out there and find her crew and track down the man who took her ship. And I had all these wonderful ideas about the characters and, I was jotting things down, and then I was like, cool, I know really nothing about piracy other than what I saw in Pirates of the Caribbean. Like, those movies were my only real idea of piracy, or not even idea, but real exposure to pirates. So I knew if this was going to be a historical fiction, while the historical parts of it isn't necessarily what I'm going to focus on, I still need to have that knowledge to know how these characters are going to function. Because it's great to just be like, yes, this is a badass female queer character who is unapologetic and aromantic, and she does her own thing and she knows who she is, and that's all well and good, but there are still historical rules of the world I have to work with. So when she's conning somebody or trying to get out of trouble, she plays the helpless female card. And when she is faced with aggressive male energy, she has to be wary because of what happened during that time to women especially. And I also wanted to learn more about female pirates because it's not talked about. It's always like a male pirate. And anytime you say pirates, people think of Jack Sparrow. Almost like 98% of people will say, oh yeah, Jack Sparrow. Like, that's their idea of a pirate. So I needed to find my idea of a pirate because I didn't want her to be a female Jack Sparrow. Because that has been done before, and like, no, I don't want that. That's not what she is. So I had to do my own research on different female pirates, and I did the all-out buying every book I could find on Amazon about female pirates. Not every book, but a lot. I think I have like now probably like 7 or 8, maybe a little bit more than that. And I pulled up websites and I just read like crazy about these female pirates. And then, I learned about Anne Bonny and Mary Read and just what these women went through, how unapologetic they were. They would literally like flash men as they were supposedly, they would literally flash men as they were sword fighting so they would know they were bested by a woman, which is rad as a story. Don't know how safe that is in practice, but they got the job done. And it made me so excited to work on the character and then also flesh out these other female characters because her crew is essentially female, or at least identify as female or identify as gender queer or gender fluid. So reading about these female pirates just gave me so many ideas for Phoenix and her crew so that they weren't all like Phoenix. Some are softer, some are tougher, some are in between, some are for themselves, some are super feminine, some are super tom. Like, it's just a wide spectrum of ladies and other genders, but it's still grounded in reality and history, and that's what I wanted. When I first started writing the book, I didn't know what genre I wanted. That was another issue. I was like, well, there's going to be romantic elements because I like doing that, but I don't know if there's going to be, like, I was just all over the place. And now that I have taken a moment, put it away for a few years and come back to it, it's becoming a more cohesive story. And part of that is because I took all of that research I did and put it to good use and really used it to ground the story in reality. At least I hope that's what I'm doing. So far, I've been told I'm doing well, so I guess I'll know when I finish it and release it. But all in all, that is what I have to say on the topic of research. Big advocate for it. Do it. It'll help so much, and it can be incredibly inspirational. All right, so yeah, that's all I have for this episode of I Got Nothing, a podcast for exhausted writers. Again, I'm your exhausted writer, Leani Lopez. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, technically Twitter, Tumblr, all of that jazz. My 2 books are on Amazon. I also have another podcast, which is an audio drama called To Court Death, and it is available where all podcasts are. It's 5 episodes. It's complete. It's my baby, and you should check it out. Again, I'll add the links in the description. As always, if you have any questions or topics you want me to cover, send them my way, and I look forward to talking to you guys again soon. Bye!